All right. Hello, 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 and welcome to Intercultural Spark. So, do you know what your passion in life is? Well, today my guest is Karen Putz, and she is a passion mentor. She also has founded the Diversity Academy. She's written multiple books on all these subjects, as seen on CNN and in Oprah magazine. She's absolutely amazing. So, welcome to Intercultural Spark and to Hello, Karen.
Hello. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I am wonderful. So I'm so excited to have you. And we talked about that it made sense for me to let people know this ahead of time. So Karen's an amazing passion coach and mentor. You were born hard of hearing and then became deaf from a barefoot skiing accident as a teen. But the reason it made sense is because people who know me know if I'm looking off to the side, I'm probably doing other things. If Karen looks off to the side, it's because she's reading my lips, but then also double checking with the monitor where you can see, what I
speech to text app that I'm using.
Yeah.
And I was born with normal hearing.
So you were okay.
I can remember being able to hear when I was a young child, and then I started losing my hearing in elementary school, and then I became deaf as a teen.
From the accident, right? From the barefoot skiing accident. So
barefoot water skiing was my passion as a teen. I loved that sport. And then one day I turned across the lake and I just crashed into the water. And when I climbed into the boat, I had gone deaf. I lost the remaining hearing that I had, and I could no longer hear anything at that point. And then I had to wear hearing aids from that point, 24/7.
So, but also it sounds like, so actually one question I want to ask for you, just our process of talking. So I think about going to a foreign, like when I travel, my husband's from Brazil, we go to Brazil, and when there's a language barrier, people often shout, they talk louder. And I'm realizing, which is probably terrible for you, I want to enunciate more, but it doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, too much. Doesn't. A little bit of slowing down and a little bit finer enunciation is great. It's great. Often a lot of people talk about listen up through the mouth or not. Then I can't let through them.
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
Lips really does help me understand what's being said.
All right. So we want to talk about, that was just our process. Let's get to our content, which is all about passion. So I do want to start with the moment, though, of barefoot skiing, because it was the barefoot skiing accident that had a big impact and a change on your life when you became deaf. But it also was barefoot skiing midlife that got you on this road to being a passion mentor. What happened and how did that get you where you are now?
What happened was that 11 years ago, my husband found a link to a Today Show segment featuring a 66-year-old woman, Judy Myers. And on the Today Show, Judy Myers is barefoot water skiing. She's got the biggest smile on her face, and I'm watching that. There were no captions back then, 11 years ago, and I am just sitting there and I'm bawling. Because you see, I had just turned 44 years old, and the day before my 44th birthday, I tried the barefoot water ski again. Couldn't get my feet anywhere near the water. And so I'm thinking, I'm old, life is over. Why in the world didn't I enjoy this sport more when I could do it? Here I am in midlife, and there's nothing to look forward to except for wrinkles and sagging back clothes. And all of my friends were slowing down. We were getting together, and we were having the same old conversations. So life just became boring at that point. And then seeing Judy on the TV changed everything for me. Got in touch with her through Facebook, and she invited me to come to Florida, introduced me to the two-time world barefoot champion, Kit St. Ange. Keith and I became wonderful friends. I ended up writing a book with him, and that started me on my book writing career. And since then, I've written multiple books, and in the process of getting back on the water, I started meeting all these other people who were living passionate lives. And so then I picked up a book called The Passion Test. It was that book that got me down the path of becoming a passion test facilitator, a passion coach. And I have given hundreds of those passion tests throughout the years.
So what's a passion test? How do you take a passion test?
The passion test was written by Janet and Chris Atwood. And it, at first glance, is a very simple test. But when you sit down to do it, you often find yourself fighting back and forth of what do you really want from life? And that's what the passion test does. It actually helps you identify those 5 things that are really important to you and how you want to live your life. And the first time I did the passion test, the number one thing that came up for me was that I wanted to barefoot water ski all year around. But immediately your brain starts thinking about all the reasons why you can't do something. You don't have the money, you don't have the right clothes, lakes are frozen in Chicago, all the things. Janet said to me, my mentor, she said, Karen, don't think about the how. The how will resolve itself. Focus on the what that you want in your life. She was completely right. That year, I barefoot water skied 11 months out of the 12 months.
I'm going to show that picture again so people understand that you're really talking. You'll see she has no skis on. There's nothing on your feet. So it's literally water skiing that's barefoot. What's so exciting about it? How's it different than water skiing regular, and what makes it so exciting without skis?
42 miles an hour. If you are 1 centimeter off, you nosedive. And hitting that water at 42 miles an hour is like hitting concrete sometimes.
Wow.
It is a sport that it's a small sport. Very few people are willing to do that, but the thrill of doing it is beyond anything that I've ever experienced. The moment I put my feet on the water, everything just fades away, except for the passion that you're feeling and the challenge, the excitement, the wow, I'm doing this. All of that is part of that feeling of passion. A lot of times we get stuck with passion thinking, I need to find my passion. That's not how it works. Passion is a gift within you. And it's up to us to unwrap that gift within us. We're born with that gift within.
Well, it also sounds like, oftentimes when people think about finding their passion, it's the idea that, well, I'm going to find my passion and then I can build my career and my worth around it. But I don't think that's what you're talking about. Your passion doesn't have to be your vocation, correct?
No. If anything, passion is the way you live your life. It's not what you do. It's how you live your life. And you can bring that energy into your life at any moment throughout the day. By your attitude, by your thoughts, by your actions. And all too often what we do is we get stuck in a routine that does not serve us day by day by day. Then we get to the end of our life and we call it a life, and we realize that we've frittered away our days without really feeling and understanding what we want.
I thought what was interesting, Karen, is so you were talking about those 5 questions, I think you said, and they were as published in Oprah magazine. But the 5 questions about creativity, and one of them was, think of a time when you felt pure joy. And it was interesting to me. So I've been looking at the questions and I realized that even things like, I also teach aerobics, being in front of a group of people, making them exercise, feel happy, it is pure joy. And so I think I thought, like, when you find your passion, it has to be a capital P. It has to be something that's life shattering. But talk about, and you interviewed 200 people. So what did you find was consistent across all these people in finding their passion?
The thing that I found consistent is that when people sat and took the time to understand what they really wanted and said no to the stuff that was off their path, that is when they were able to tap into that energy at the highest level. The other thing that I learned from interviewing two people is that one of the things that after I wrote Unwrapping Your Passion, I could not figure out why is it that some people take off with their passion from day one and other people are struggling to figure out what they want to do in life. What was the difference? And in the process of writing the next book, I discovered that there are actually 5 levels of passion.
Okay.
And then that is what differentiates all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because passion at the very basic bottom level is, what are we curious about? That's where passion is born, in our curiosity. Then we bring it up, we start learning about what we're curious about. That's the second level. Then we get into the excitement stage. We're excited, we're enthusiastic about it. But between the excitement stage and the very next stage, which is acknowledgement, that is where we lose people.
And what do you mean acknowledgement? So acknowledging that this may be your passion, or that this is your passion.
What is your joy? What do you want? That's the 4th level. The highest level is the recognition. People start seeing your passion. They start associating with you. People everywhere I went were associating me with barefoot water skiing, or writing, or speaking, or painting now. So those are those 5 levels. But people lose it between the enthusiasm and the acknowledgement, because that's when passion gets hard. The root meaning behind passion is the willingness to suffer. When you're willing to suffer, get up and do all your dance moves, willing to drive an hour to teach class, willing to, train, 3-4 hours for a marathon, all those things are in the willingness to suffer stage. If you can go through that stage with the recognition that this is what I'm passionate about, you can get to the highest level.
I mean, it sounds like for you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you give up, you never experience that whole roundness of passion in your life. Many people give up.
I mean, I think sometimes when you're pursuing your passion, there is physical pain. Like I was reading about, you broke your knee. I mean, your process of really being able to be barefoot skiing again was physically painful. That said, I feel like sometimes the pain is more emotional, where people feel like they need to ask permission from others in their life to make this thing that they're passionate about be central, especially if you're in relationships, you're a parent, you're married, when you have these other obligations, it feels like it's harder to make space for that passion without getting buy-in from others.
But here's the thing. That we have to understand and realize is that a lot of times, like as parents, we will sacrifice for our children, but our children benefit when we tap into passion, because they get a passionate parent out of the deal. They get to see that we set aside time for ourselves to really immerse ourselves in joy. Children can be a part of that. I mean, I dragged all 3 of my kids on the water and I made them barefoot water ski. At the time, my boys loved it. My daughter said, you get 1 shot at it. She got it on the
That's it.
But you can find ways to bring your children, your family, your friends into the things that you're passionate about. They can share that joy with you.
And I believe so. Jerry is a client of mine, and his passion, he talks about he's 92 years old, and it's he's 92 years old. And we just created a program last week where there were 220 grandparents from 22 states were using writing prompts to write their stories. And his passion is grandparenting. And what I find phenomenal is when he talks about his passion, it's like doors just open. People just want to support what he's doing because of how he talks about those things that he's passionate.
That's it. Passion is energy, and
Mm-hmm.
that attracts people to you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
will
I
say,
think you said in something that you wrote too, the idea that when you find your passion and you're following it, that it's almost like the doors open, that the universe supports finding that passion.
mhm. That was a quote from a mentor of mine, Kevin
Okay.
Putz,
Mm-hmm.
because I reached out to him and I was struggling. I needed some advice. And Kevin said to me, Karen, follow your bliss with all your heart, and people will open doors for you. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually a quote from Joseph Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
and it has never been more true.
Mm-hmm.
When you are on your path, on purpose, deep into the energy of passion, you're going to attract people to you. You're going to attract opportunities to you. Things are going to show up in your life, and new paths are going to create in front of you because you have harnessed that energy of passion. People are attracted to that.
Mm-hmm. How do you think people can be ready? Because sometimes it feels like so you're attracting all this energy and there's always that voice of self-doubt. How do you support your passion so that once you identify it and you're on that path, that you can continue to lift it up?
That's a very good question. Good question. This is the way I look at it. The mind often says one thing and the heart says the other thing. And the trick is to really recognize who you are as a person. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? How do you want to live your life? All too often, we get caught up in routines by the people around us, by society, by common practices, and we often stuck down what's important to us, what our heart is telling us.
Mm-hmm.
We get caught up in our head. And when that happens, I tell people that they have to have a routine that really fosters the soul, whether it's sitting in silence, learning to meditate, journaling, walking in nature. There are practices and routines that you can put into your day that will help you harness that energy of what is it that you want? How do you want to live?
Mm-hmm.
And you will start making decisions from the heart
Mm-hmm.
and not just from the head.
And it sounds like, I mean, the whole thing. So the Ageless Passions, your business, you actually have a passion school where you teach people how to uncover their passion. So it's a process.
Mhm.
Anybody, do you believe anybody can tap into figuring out what their passion is?
Anyone, I have taught this in elementary school, all the way up. I've had 80-year-olds take this. The process is the same for both. It's about uncovering who you are, what you want, and how you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
When we sit down and take the time to do that, all of a sudden the ideas and the process start to become clear.
Mm-hmm. How important is having a mentor? In your case, you had the old lady who calls herself the old lady. I didn't call her that. Um, but Judy, who first actually started barefoot water skiing at age 53, what she's 77 and still competing. She became an amazing mentor. How important is it to find someone who's a mentor when you're following your passion?
It is extremely critical.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think it is the number one way to get successfully where you want to get going is to have a mentor, someone who is further along on the path that you are going down. And here's the thing, when I went back to barefoot water skiing, I trained with the top 4 barefoot water skiers in the world. And they taught me to barefoot backwards on one foot with my hands in the air, something I could not even imagine.
Wait, you don't have a picture of that, do you? I've only got you.
Do it, you Google it on the internet.
Oh my gosh.
The thing is, that is what a coach or a mentor does for
Yeah.
you, is that they show you the possibilities. You may not be in that place where you can see that possibility yourself, but a coach and a mentor, they can see the skills, they can see the abilities, and they know the steps to get you from step A to step Z. I mean, it took me 3 days to learn to barefoot backwards. You know,
Mhm.
things like that. That's what a passion mentor or a coach or someone will do.
Mhm.
is they will cut your learning process literally in half.
Oh, so that they can push you on the path to where you want to be. And you've said so it's someone who can push you. I still get not caught up's not the right word, but that idea of how you have a spectacular, amazing life because you've connected to your passion, but it still can be something that is not your vocation or your calling. What's the difference there? I guess what's the difference between passion and calling, and how do you have space for passion in your life if it's not the core thing that you do?
The only difference is what you decide that difference is. That's literally what it is. When people ask me that all the time, I ask them, you have to decide whether what it is that comes from within you. You know, you assign meaning to the things that you live through and experience in your life. What's important for one person, meaningless for another. That's why you have to decide what is meaningful for you. What defines purpose in your life? If you want to call it a calling, what does it look like for you? Because for every single person, it is a different experience. And that's what I call the passion path. We're on different paths.
Well, it sounds like too, for people, if you go to Ageless Passions, you've got all kinds of things. There's like the 22 tips for finding your passion. You can actually download your book. So this book, which is really, it's a really easy and fun read. And it actually talks about all the physical pain that you went through in trying to learn how to ski again. But so you have a lot of tips, you have courses. It really sounds like you've gotten this down to a science to help people uncover their passions and follow those passions at any age.
Yep. One thing that we should probably mention is that passion doesn't have to cost money. A lot of times we think, oh, I want to do this, but it costs me money to do it. I can't do it. And there are definitely ways you can harness the energy of passion without money being involved.
Or like you've done, where you've taken your passion and now put it into something where it is actually your business, or it is something that drives you. I know they always say, like, if there's that thing that you'll do, whether you're paid or not, during pandemic when all the fitness clubs closed. I know I actually was in my basement by myself filming exercise workouts because some people were like, we need to work out. And that's when you start to realize those things that you'll do no matter what are really some of the things that drive your passion.
Yeah.
So one thing actually, Karen, that I'm extremely passionate about, which connects to your other, I don't know if you want to call it your other hat, but I've always been fascinated by diversity. So I speak a few different languages, and, you know, my son was little, we would purposely go we would go grocery shopping in different ethnic neighborhoods in Chicago. And it's just something that's so important and I'm passionate about. So I wanted to shift, if we can, to the other business that you do, which is the Diversity Academy, which is the Diversity Academy for interpreters. So
this is a business that provides continuing education for sign language interpreters. And I co-founded it with my business partner, Dr. Suzette Garay. And basically what we do is we provide training on diversity topics that appear within the interpreting profession. You know, a lot of the interpreting profession is majority white people. So there are often situations where, you know, people of color may have an interpreter who, you know, is white. What are the dynamics that happen and come up in that? And we train on that. We invite a variety of speakers, people of color, to come in and train interpreters so that they can better understand, you know, diversity, inclusion, power, privilege, oppression topics.
So you're saying most of the interpreters in the field are white. Is that what you're saying? But then they're interpreting for all different things. So I'm going to ask you, if it's okay, in the field of diversity and inclusion, we often say, like, it's not the person's responsibility to teach. So for example, it's not responsible for people who are white, let's say, to ask someone who's Black, tell me about diversity. That said, because we're here together and we're specifically talking about this, in reading everything, I have so many questions, which I realize I know absolutely nothing about deaf culture. Including, what I found interesting is you do training not only for hearing interpreters who are listening to someone speak and then they're here signing for people who are hearing impaired, but then there were people also who were listening to, let's say, a speech of everyone who's hearing impaired and then translating it to speech.
Okay, first of all, using the word hearing impaired, we avoid that term.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's
okay.
what diversity inclusion is. The terms deaf, hard of hearing, deafblind are the acceptable terms that we use in place of hearing impaired. So I'm trying to think of your question. And then you mentioned earlier about whose responsibility it is. And that is a very profound way of looking at it. And the way we look at it at Diversity Academy is that our deaf and hard of hearing, people of color, they are the experts in helping others to understand what needs to be changed, but it is ultimately up to us to take action on that change. And we are always thankful for the interpreters who show up at the Diversity Academy because they are willing to transform. They are willing to move into action rather than just learning, rather than just, giving lip service to the support, but actually going out there and implementing things, as allies and implementing change. The change has to happen in the system.
How does so someone who is a hearing interpreter is not deaf, correct? Because they would need to hear what's being said to be able to interpret. You're talking about people who are usually white, and there's so much talk now about implicit bias and unconscious bias. How does that come out in signing? How would like someone's implicit bias or unconscious bias come out in signing?
Well, if you look at the interpreting profession, over 90% of it is white interpreters trained in programs by white instructors. And then if you look at the deaf community, very diverse, a very diverse community. But you have a pool of interpreters trained in a certain way, going out there, providing service for a diverse community. And that is where we have issues that come up, misunderstandings, microaggressions that occur, and the interpreters may not be aware of it. And that is our role at the Diversity Academy, is to, make that bridge between our deaf, diverse population, who are the experts in their lives and what they experience, what they go through daily. We pay them, so they are paid speakers, very high level in terms of what they share and how they train. We believe that we're transforming, the way the biases are happening, the way the microaggressions are happening. We've written a book on microaggression so that interpreters can understand, spot, identify, and change them. The books you're currently showing are the ones that I have from the Passion School.
Okay. And those are not, though. I don't think I have the book that you did. Actually, I take that back. I did actually. That book is downloadable from the Diversity Academy. When you sign up for your e-news, there is a book that shows like 19 different things to consider, which is where I started realizing the two-way nature of it. I always thought of the person who was deaf as the person who needed the help. So someone would be interpreting for the deaf person. I hadn't thought about it the other way, where someone might be interpreting for for the hearing person. I guess because they do I guess what I'm getting at is I'm thinking of a public setting. So I'm thinking of like the governor just spoke and he has an interpreter on stage.
Yes.
And so there's two thoughts with this. One is the amount of, the amount of expression, like it was just the emotion that was conveyed I hadn't seen before. Talk about that first, and then I'll go back to the other question.
Sure. American Sign Language, a full, beautiful language. And so when you are looking at someone and you're seeing all the different expressions that are going on, the movement, the eyebrows and shoulders forward and all of that, those are grammar markers in American Sign Language. So know how your voice goes up and down, the person who's speaking. Mm-hmm. Same thing with our sign language.
So those are actually taught as grammar markers.
Eyebrows go down, our shoulders come forward, hands go up, hands go down, they go out to the same inflections that you use in your voice. Mm-hmm. And when you're speaking passionately and your voice is going up and down, same thing happens in signing.
Mm-hmm. But you're saying those are actually taught. So like the eyebrow or the shoulders, some of those are actually grammar that's taught as part of learning signing.
Yeah, because
that's fascinating.
But you can say, oh, you know what I mean? It's different. You emphasize the sign changes the meaning behind the sign with the grammar markers on the page. It's that same sign, but you have little movements that make it different. How you would say no versus no.
Right. Are you joking? Are you serious? Yeah, it's a huge difference.
Right. I can see what happens with American Sign Language.
I was fascinated by him because he was so animated. And I think just other events that I've done where we'll have someone who's signing, it must have been the talk was more serious because people were more straightforward. And it was fun to watch him because he was conveying so much. And it was press conferences about COVID and right when everything was happening. So there was a lot of emotion that I'm sure the governor wanted to convey, and it really was captured by the person who was signing.
In the recent presidential debate, one company actually had 3 interpreters for the moderator, for Biden, for the president. And at one point, all 3 interpreters were going at the same time because they were all crossing.
And they were doing for different people. Wow.
Regular captioning can't do that.
Right.
So the captioning could not keep up where the interpreters could show the chaos that was happening on the screen where the captioning could not.
Wow. It's really fascinating. It's so layered. It's much more layered than I'd ever imagined, which goes back to the question I've tried to ask now 3 times, which I think I finally understand what I'm trying to say. I just realized if you were one-on-one and you had an interpreter, they would be signing for the person who was deaf, but then they would be speaking for the person who was hearing. I hadn't thought about that direction. I had only seen interpreting as a one-way street in public programs. Talk about that. So that sounds like there's a lot involved.
It's the bridge. The bridge of communication between someone who is deaf and someone who's hearing. The interpreter is not for the deaf person. It's for both. The bridge of communication for both, so they can come together and communicate on the same level.
Now, what's the etiquette? Because when there's a language barrier and you have an interpreter, the etiquette is to look at the speaker, not the interpreter. But it strikes me that you would have to look at the interpreter with sign language.
Well, the deaf person would look at the interpreter, but very often what happens is that the person who can hear will sometimes use an interpreter incorrectly. They'll look at the interpreter and say, "Can you tell Karen?" Well, the interpreter is signing, "Can you tell Karen?" And we want to be able to be speaking directly to the deaf person and looking at them, even though that person is looking at the interpreter. You still want that eye contact. You can look at them, But the communication, the interpreter's there to bridge it between, the deaf person and the hearing person.
Mm-hmm. Is there any etiquette? Well, like you already corrected my etiquette, which was that it's not hearing impaired. And I also understood just from working in communities with people with disabilities that it's always the person first. So it's a person who is deaf as opposed to a deaf person. Is that true as well?
There are two different camps of
Okay.
thinking for that. There is one camp that believes deaf is an identity, a cultural experience, not a disability. So deaf, hard of hearing,
Interesting.
perfectly fine to you. I tell people I am deaf. Proud of it. I'm happy about it. It's part of my identity, who I am. And there are others who believe in person first, a person with disability, a person who is deaf, a person who is hard of hearing. Very different views.
Well, in our case too, you were very helpful. We did a couple things. One was just at the outset, you said it might be good to let people know why I'm looking off to the side, not realizing that my sister would be like, okay, that's not your excuse, Deanna. And the other thing is we did put closed captioning. So we had closed captioning on both the Facebook Live and the YouTube Live to be able to make it more accessible. I have so many more questions. This always happens to me. Like when we end the broadcast, just stay because I have 100 more questions. But before we close, I wanted to go back to, we're going back to your first hat, to Ageless Passion, because Brianna wanted to know, and it's a good question, what advice would you give to people who know what their passion is, but their inner critic or self-doubt is holding them back from following it?
That is a common one, a very common scenario. In fact, that's probably the number one reason why people don't dive into that energy of passion. They let the stuff in their head stop them. Self-talk, the self-doubt. There's a couple of things that you can do. One, work with a coach, work with a mentor. Have a ritual every day that sets aside time where you recognize and honor what is meaningful to you. The other thing is learning to say no to the stuff that robs you of passion. Because think about this. We all have that same 24 hours in the day, but we all experience it differently. It's all up to us and how we choose. Sometimes people will tell me, well, I really don't have a choice. And then we'll really break it down. Is it true? Where would you be without this choice? How much are you willing to change, give up, or reduce so that you have more time and energy and joy in the direction that you really want to live? And the other thing that I have people do is I actually have them sit down and fast forward 10 years and look back at the way they're living today. Would that be okay? If you would live the exact same life 5 years, 10 years from now, would that be okay? Many, many times people I work with say, no. What are you going to do differently so that your next 5 years doesn't look like your last 5 years? We have that power within us to create and shape the life that we want to live. It's within us.
I feel like we just got a storm warning. Actually, that was the wake-up call. That was very good timing. That was the wake-up call to get up and move now. You're right, especially at midlife. It's how do you make sure that at the end, you used a phrase like this, and Jerry, who I talked about before, he always says that 92, he goes, don't die until you're dead. Like not dead yet. I'm going to keep going and creating. And I think you've mentioned that as well. Like as long as you've got power in you to keep moving forward toward your goals. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being on Intercultural Spark today. And Intercultural Spark, it's that spark inside each of us that drives us to spark change in the world. And you're doing it on so many different levels and writing about it. So I hope people will check you out, agelesspassions.com, especially if you need a passion coach. And then also, of course, the diversityacademy.com. So thank you so much. Really enjoyed our
Thank
time
you for
together.
having me.
So my pleasure. Bye-bye.